August 1632, Constantinople. The streets fall silent. Shopkeepers quickly close their doors. Soldiers stand perfectly still. Even the whispers disappear, because somewhere in the city, Sultan Murad IV is walking through the streets, disguised as an ordinary man. No royal guards, no golden robes, no warning. Every citizen knows the terrifying rumor. If the Sultan catches someone drinking alcohol, breaking his laws, or even questioning his authority, they may never see another sunrise. That night, a man sits inside a small coffee house, laughing with his friends. He believes the stories are exaggerated. Surely the Sultan would never leave his palace just to catch ordinary people. The door suddenly opens. A tall stranger steps inside. No one recognizes him until he removes his cloak. The room freezes. The laughter stops. Faces turn pale, because standing before them is Sultan Murad IV himself. Within moments, the punishment begins. No trial, no mercy, only fear. Across Europe, kings hear stories about this ruthless Ottoman ruler. Some call him a tyrant, others call him a genius. But everyone agrees on one thing. No Ottoman Sultan had inspired such fear in generations. He conquered great cities, crushed rebellions, restored an empire that stood on the edge of collapse. But he ruled with an iron fist, and left behind one of the darkest legacies in Ottoman history. Who was Sultan Murad IV? Was he the savior of the Ottoman Empire, or the Sultan the whole world feared? Today, we uncover the incredible story of one of history's most feared rulers. When Murad IV became Sultan in 1623, he was only 11 years old. He wore the crown of one of the world's greatest empires, but he possessed none of its real power. Inside Topkapi Palace, ambitious officials, powerful viziers, rebellious janissaries, and even members of the royal court fought to control the young sultan. Every decision was made for him. Every order carried someone else's influence. Beyond the palace walls, the empire was falling into chaos. Corruption spread through the government. Provincial governors ignored the sultan's commands. Rebellions erupted across Anatolia. In the east, the Safavid Empire seized Ottoman territory, while in the west, Ottoman authority continued to weaken. Many believed the empire was entering its final years. But everything changed as Murad grew older. At the age of 18, he made a decision that shocked the entire empire. He would no longer be a puppet. He would rule with his own hands, and anyone who stood in his way would be crushed. One by one, corrupt officials disappeared. Disloyal commanders were executed. Rebellious janissaries who had once terrified previous sultans suddenly found themselves fearing the young ruler they had underestimated. Murad IV wasn't interested in compromise. He believed that only absolute authority could save the Ottoman Empire, and he was willing to use any amount of force to restore order. Within only a few years, the atmosphere inside Constantinople completely changed. Crime fell dramatically. Government officials obeyed without question. Soldiers who had once challenged the throne now stood silently before it. Across Europe, rumors spread about a young Ottoman sultan whose punishments were swift, brutal, and impossible to escape. Some called him a monster. Others called him the only man capable of saving a dying empire. Power had finally returned to the throne, but Murad IV believed that controlling the palace was not enough. If the Ottoman Empire was to survive, he would have to control the streets as well. So he issued some of the harshest laws in Ottoman history. Alcohol was banned. Tobacco was banned. Even coffee houses, the places where people gathered to talk about politics and criticize the government, were shut down. Anyone caught breaking these laws faced severe punishment. There were no long investigations, no second chances. Murad believed that fear was more effective than mercy, and he intended to make every citizen understand that the Sultan's word was absolute. But Murad IV didn't simply sit inside Topkapi Palace waiting for reports. Within a few years, Constantinople had completely changed. Crime fell sharply. Government officials became more disciplined. Soldiers obeyed without hesitation. To his supporters, Murad IV had restored order to an empire on the verge of collapse. To his critics, he ruled through terror rather than justice. Yet while the capital grew quieter, another challenge awaited him far beyond the city walls, an enemy that had humiliated the Ottoman Empire for years. Murad IV was about to prove that he was not only a ruthless ruler, but also a fearless commander on the battlefield. Murad IV knew that ruling through fear inside Constantinople would mean nothing if the Ottoman Empire continued losing wars. For years, the Safavid Empire had challenged Ottoman power in the east, capturing valuable territory and humiliating Ottoman commanders. Among all the cities the Ottomans wanted back, one stood above the rest: Baghdad, a city of immense wealth, strategic importance, and deep religious significance. Previous campaigns had failed. Generals had promised victory, only to return in defeat. Murad IV decided that this time would be different. He would not send another commander. He would lead the army himself. In 1638, thousands of Ottoman soldiers marched east under the personal command of their sultan. It was one of the longest and most difficult military campaigns in Ottoman history. The army crossed mountains, rivers, and burning deserts. Disease, exhaustion, and harsh weather claimed countless lives before the first battle even began. Yet Murad refused to turn back. He marched beside his soldiers, shared their hardships, and demanded the same discipline from himself that he expected from every man in his army. His determination inspired confidence throughout the ranks. For the first time in years, the Ottoman army believed it could achieve the impossible. When the Ottomans finally reached Baghdad, a brutal siege began. Massive cannons bombarded the city's defenses day and night, while Ottoman engineers dug trenches and advanced toward the walls. Weeks of relentless fighting followed. Every street became a battlefield. Every gate was fiercely defended. But Murad IV refused to abandon the assault. At last, after years of Safavid control, Baghdad fell back into Ottoman hands. The victory echoed across the Islamic world and throughout Europe. Murad IV had done what many believed could never be done. He had restored Ottoman honor and proved that the empire still possessed the strength to defeat its greatest rivals. The victory at Baghdad transformed Murad IV into a legend. Across the Ottoman Empire, people celebrated him as the Sultan who had restored the empire's lost pride. Even his enemies were forced to respect him. European ambassadors described him as fearless in battle, relentless in punishment, and impossible to intimidate. Stories spread that Murad possessed extraordinary physical strength. It was said he could draw bows that ordinary soldiers couldn't even bend and wield enormous swords with ease. Whether every story was true or not hardly mattered. They strengthened the image of a ruler who seemed larger than life. But behind this image of strength lay a darker reality. Murad IV trusted very few people. Suspicion followed him everywhere. A single rumor of betrayal could become a death sentence. High-ranking officials, governors, military commanders, and even members of the royal court lived in constant fear of losing the Sultan's confidence. One mistake, one careless word, or one failed mission could end a career or a life. Murad believed that fear kept the empire united, and he never hesitated to make an example of anyone who challenged his authority. As the years passed, the empire grew stronger, but the atmosphere inside the palace became increasingly tense. Loyalty was no longer inspired by admiration alone. It was enforced through fear. The same iron fist that had restored order was beginning to create new enemies behind the palace walls. No one dared to oppose the Sultan openly, but many quietly waited for the day when his rule would finally come to an end. But no matter how powerful Murad IV became, there was one enemy he could never truly defeat: himself. The Sultan, who had banned alcohol across the empire, secretly became addicted to it. While his subjects lived under the strictest laws in Ottoman history, Murad often ignored the very rules he had imposed on everyone else. It was a dangerous contradiction. The man who demanded absolute discipline from his empire slowly began losing control over his own health. Years of constant warfare, endless pressure, and heavy drinking started taking their toll. Murad was still a young man, but his body was growing weaker with every passing year. Few people inside the palace dared to speak about it openly, yet everyone could see the truth. The fearless sultan who had terrified Europe and crushed the Safavids was no longer as strong as he had once been. Behind the magnificent palace walls, physicians struggled to help him, while court officials quietly wondered what would happen if the empire suddenly lost its most powerful ruler. Then, in 1640, the unimaginable happened. At only 27 years old, Sultan Murad IV died. His death shocked the entire Ottoman Empire. The ruler who had restored order, reconquered Baghdad, and forced both friends and enemies to fear his name was gone. There was no great battle, no assassination, no dramatic last stand. The man who had survived countless dangers was defeated by the one enemy he could never conquer, his own body. And with his death, the future of the Ottoman Empire once again became uncertain. Murad IV left behind an empire that was stronger than the one he had inherited. Crime had fallen. Rebellions had been crushed. Baghdad had returned to Ottoman control, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the empire had regained its former glory. But there was one problem. Almost everything depended on one man. Murad had ruled through fear, absolute authority, and his own commanding presence. Few institutions had been strengthened. Few leaders had been prepared to continue his work. The empire had become stable, but it had also become dependent on the Sultan himself. After his death, his younger brother, Sultan Ibrahim, inherited the throne. Unlike Murad IV, Ibrahim had spent years locked inside the palace under the constant fear of execution. Isolation had left deep psychological scars. Many historians believe he was never truly prepared to rule an empire of such enormous size. The discipline Murad had enforced so ruthlessly slowly began to disappear. Court politics returned. Corruption spread once again. Powerful officials started competing for influence, and the sense of fear that had kept everyone obedient faded almost overnight. This became Murad IV's greatest paradox. During his lifetime, his methods saved the Ottoman Empire from collapse. But because his system relied so heavily on one extraordinary ruler, it struggled to survive after he was gone. His victories were real. His achievements were undeniable. Yet the empire soon discovered that ruling through fear could restore order, but it could not guarantee stability forever. And that is why historians still debate his legacy to this very day. More than 3 centuries after his death, Sultan Murad IV remains one of the most controversial rulers in Ottoman history. To some historians, he was a ruthless dictator whose punishments crossed every limit. To others, he was the man who saved the Ottoman Empire when it stood only a few steps away from collapse. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. There is no doubt that he ruled with fear. But there is also no doubt that when he took the throne, the empire was drowning in rebellion, corruption, and military defeat. Within less than 2 decades, he restored discipline, defeated powerful enemies, and reminded the world that the Ottoman Empire was still a force to be feared. Even today, Murad IV's military campaigns are studied by historians around the world. His reconquest of Baghdad remains one of the Ottoman Empire's greatest victories. His leadership on the battlefield inspired thousands of soldiers to fight beside him rather than behind him. Unlike many rulers who commanded wars from the safety of their palaces, Murad marched with his army, endured the same hardships, and faced the same dangers. That courage earned him the respect of both his allies and his enemies. Yet his greatest legacy may not be the cities he conquered, but the question he left behind. Can an empire survive through fear alone? Murad IV proved that fear could restore order, silence rebellion, and rebuild a crumbling state. But after his death, much of that order began to disappear. His story reminds us that strength can win battles, but lasting greatness requires something even stronger than fear. And that lesson would shape the future of the Ottoman Empire for generations to come. There is one reason why Sultan Murad IV is still remembered today, while many other Ottoman sultans have been forgotten. It wasn't simply because he conquered Baghdad, or because he ruled with an iron fist. It was because he appeared exactly when the Ottoman Empire needed a ruler who could make impossible decisions. Every empire reaches a moment when hesitation means collapse. Murad chose action instead of compromise. His methods were brutal. His punishments were severe. But for nearly 2 decades, they achieved what many believed was impossible. They stopped the Ottoman Empire from falling apart. Even the rulers of Europe watched him carefully. Diplomats sent detailed reports back to their kings describing a sultan who personally inspected his capital, led armies into battle, and demanded complete obedience from everyone around him. To his enemies, he was unpredictable. To his soldiers, he was fearless. To his people, he was a ruler they respected, but also feared. Few dared to challenge him, because everyone understood that Murad IV never made empty threats. When he gave an order, it was carried out without delay. But history rarely judges a ruler by only one side of his character. Some remember Murad IV as the man who restored the Ottoman Empire's strength. Others remember him as the sultan whose cruelty cast a shadow over his achievements. Both views contain truth, and perhaps that is what makes his story so fascinating. He was neither a perfect hero nor a simple villain. He was a man who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders and paid a heavy price for it. When people hear the name Sultan Murad IV, they often remember only one thing: fear. The sultan who walked the streets in disguise. The ruler who banned alcohol, tobacco, and coffee. The king whose punishments became legendary across the Ottoman Empire. But history tells a much deeper story. Murad IV inherited an empire on the edge of collapse. Rebellions threatened the provinces. Corruption infected the government. Powerful enemies challenged Ottoman authority on every frontier. In less than 2 decades, he restored discipline, rebuilt the army, defeated the Safavids, and brought Baghdad back under Ottoman rule. Few rulers have ever changed the fate of an empire so quickly. Yet every great ruler leaves behind a difficult question. Was the price worth paying? Murad proved that fear could silence rebellion, but it could not create lasting stability. After his death, many of his reforms faded, and the empire once again struggled with political instability. His story became a reminder that power built on one extraordinary man can rarely survive the man himself. The Ottoman Empire continued for centuries after Murad IV, but the fearless ruler who had once made the whole world tremble became a legend, remembered equally for his victories and for his ruthless justice. Even today, historians continue to debate his legacy. Was he the savior who rescued the Ottoman Empire from disaster? Or was he a tyrant whose brutality overshadowed his achievements? Perhaps the answer is both. Because the greatest rulers in history are rarely remembered as purely good or purely evil. They are remembered for changing history. And few Ottoman sultans changed the course of their empire as dramatically as Sultan Murad IV. History remembers many kings, but only a few become legends. Sultan Murad IV ruled with an iron fist, restored a fading empire, and left behind a legacy that still divides historians today. The whole world feared him, and centuries later, the world still remembers his name.